There we go. I think we're good now. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is United versus Everybody. I am your host, Sean. You guys are the fans. You guys are the community. So glad to be back. It's been a couple days. How was everybody's weekend? Let me know. Get involved in the chat. Has anybody been watching any international football at all? I know that some people get into it. Some people just watch it because there's no other football on. And there's some lower league stuff. I did watch a little bit of the United women's team take on Spurs the other day. So big up the women's team. I think that was 3-0 that finish. So they're looking good. Somebody's got to hold down the fort, right? Somebody's got to carry the weight. So big up the women's team for doing the job. I watched a little bit of England versus Finland yesterday. It was kind of like in the background while I was doing some other things. So I didn't even see any of the goals, honestly. But that's about it. If I do have time today, I was maybe going to go watch the Belgium versus France game later on this afternoon. But you guys know how I feel about international football and friendlies in general. Big up, Danny. How are you, my pal? Mustafa, how are you, man? Been a long time. Welcome back to the channel, bud. Good to see you. But you guys know how I feel about international matches. You guys know how I feel about friendlies and breaks in the season. And I know some of you are like, but Sean, it's Nations League. It's not friendlies. Yeah, it's friendlies, all right? Calling it Nations League is just bullshit-ease for friendlies. You know, I saw it on Duolingo. It's the way it is. So anyway, that being said, Danny says, I watched both of Ireland, best seen them in years. Good deal. Maybe I'll have to give Ireland a watch, see how they're getting on. But yeah, international football. I think maybe just because as a U.S. International, as an American, there hasn't been much for me to get kind of invested in terms of international football, right? The only way we're in the World Cup is because we're hosting it. So, I mean, we failed to qualify. So, and that happens to teams now and then. You know, the Netherlands didn't qualify a few years back. I don't think Italy qualified a few years back as well. So it does happen. And anyway, that being said, international break is typically, at least for me, a little bit boring, despite the media's best efforts to squeeze every last ounce of clicks out of United's name, as we've seen over the last week or so. But today there has been an interesting story that's been making the rounds the last few days. We spoke about it a little bit on Saturday, but I wanted to take a little bit more time to talk about it today. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts. So, of course, if you couldn't tell by the thumbnail, it has to do with Alvaro Carreras. I'm just going to call him Alvaro from now on. Couple of links between United and Alvaro and potential return. A lot of talk about release clauses, buyback clauses, this and that. A lot of fans really upset that we let him go last January, and it was finalized this summer as well. But a lot of news going on around a potential return for the Spanish fullback. If you caught the all-time Man United 11 stream on Saturday, go back and give that a watch if you haven't yet. We did kind of bring that up a little bit to start the show, mostly because the latest links were that we have been sending scouts to watch him play at Benfica, and he's been playing pretty well. The story has been developing, and today I wanted to take a little bit of a closer look at Alvaro's story in the last few years and whether or not it would actually be a good idea for United to bring him back. So we're going to get stuck in. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and let's get started with just what the latest and greatest has to do with Alvaro. So like I said the other day, United have sent scouts to go watch Alvaro this season, and we're not the only club who's done that. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Liverpool. I think I saw Juventus' name linked out there. I know Liverpool are probably going to be looking for a new left back soon. I think, isn't Robertson like 29, 30? And again, that's not like ancient, but you have to start planning ahead. You have to be proactive for that kind of stuff. It's good to kind of have some overlap. And so they've all been scouting him. Benfica do have, I think it's a release clause of around 50 million, I want to say. But I think if United are interested, we obviously don't have to pay a release clause. We are first in line if we are interested because we do have a buyback clause. And that buyback clause, I think, is roughly like 17 or 18 million pounds, I want to say. According to reports, though, that buyback clause is only active until 2026. So when summer 2026 rolls around, if we haven't made our decision, that buyback clause is bye-bye, and we have to pay up like everybody else. So we would have to make a decision before then if we want to bring back Alvaro, which could play into it, as we're going to talk about a little later on. It's about a 1.5-year cushion to see how he develops if we're still kind of on the fence. But the question is would we need him sooner? Would another more maybe experienced, more expensive option be better for us? Could Alvaro return now or this summer and do a job? Or is it better to let him develop and then maybe revisit that in the summer? We'll see. Danny says Houston gave a good mention to Goodwill Kokoni, 16-year-old. Oh, yeah, Godwin, yeah. Left center back. Yeah, that dude's a unit too. I've seen him a little bit here and there. The buyback clause is like 17 or 18 million. I want to say that's pounds, Danny, for Alvaro. So very good deals considering they have a 50 million release clause. And I think we have a match clause too. So if somebody comes in and wants to, and Benfica take a lower offer, like for some reason, if they were like, oh, we'll take 15 million from him from like, I don't know, Atletico Madrid or something, we also have the option to come and match that too. We have, if anything below the buyback clause, we can come in and match it, I believe was the story as well. So that's what the current rumors are, the current stories running around. We've sent some scouts, we have some scouts, we have a buyback clause. The latest and greatest is that it expires in 2026. That's what's going on. Now, let's look at our current left back situation. I feel like we've spoken about this a lot. Danny says, just do it. Yeah. We're going to get to that. And you guys let me know in the chat whether or not you would do this, whether or not you think it's the right time. He's still only, 21 years old. He's had a really good season at Preston. We're going to get into that. So you guys get your thoughts in on the chat. I will come back periodically to get your guys' opinions. So current left back situation at United. Tons of fans are raging, first and foremost, that we let Alvaro go. And they've been clamoring for us to bring him back since he's been lighting it up over in Benfica. And I understand why everyone wants him to come back, right? We've basically had no left backs for more than a year. Disregarding international matches, looking at you, Luke Shaw. Shaw and Malacia have just been non-existent basically as part of the squad. And you guys know how I feel about that. I don't consider either of them really a part of the squad anymore. It's just the way it is. Sure, you can say Shaw's been here for almost a decade, but like we said on Saturday, has he really been here for a decade? If you want to look at how many matches he's been free for and fit for, it's been like 5 years. We had Sergio Reguilon obviously on loan last season, but we opted to let both him and Alvaro go again. Remember, we ended Alvaro's loan at Granada early, and then we loaned him back out to Benfica and put all those clauses in. So we opted to let go of Reguilon and Alvaro last January, when we were pretty much strapped for left backs. But this was done under the reassurances from our medical staff that Shaw and Malacia would be fit. How's that working out for us, right? Last year, we shoehorned Amrabat in at left back. I was at that game against Palace where he was playing there. Lindelof played left back. Dallow's been playing there all season, and he's looked a little shaky. I don't know if it's just that he's playing on the left, because he has played left back before. I think there are aspects. I think it's more to do with who he's playing with on that side compared to who he's playing with on the right side, because Rashford doesn't really help out enough. And I think that there are deficiencies in Dallow's game as a defender that he needs to work on, i.e. closing people down before they put balls in the box. I think he has some opportunity there to work on that. He tends to stand off people just a little too much. I don't think it has as much to do with the left back, but this is where we're at right now. We've also seen Toby Collier play there for a match. So this is what we're doing right now while we wait for Shaw and Malacia to recover. So I'll say it again, and I know Danny's going to echo me sentiments. Left back should have been a priority in the summer. It just should have. It's criminal that we didn't. Lionhearts, welcome back, bud. Danny B says, I felt Eric Tenhag never gave him a chance. Yeah, we're going to get into that as well. Lionheart says, I think it would mess up Harry Amas' development. So no, I would just give him a go. Yeah, Amas is still, 5 years younger than Alvaro is right now. So I don't know how close Amas is or how close the club thinks he is to getting into the first team. But we'll see. They gave him a little bit of a shot in preseason. He hasn't been part of the squad really at all since. And obviously we opted for Collier there. We opted for a fresh academy graduate who doesn't even play left back, doesn't even play defender, to come in and play there over doing that. So it's interesting. So this brings us to Alvaro. That's our current left back situation. This is where let's talk about Alvaro himself. So we signed him in 2020 from Real Madrid's academy, similar to how we brought in Alejandro Garnacho from Atletico Madrid's academy. So he's very young. We brought him in, one for the future. He spent a lot of time with the U23s. He was actually our U23 Player of the Year in the 21-22 season. So one of the bright spots of the 21-22 season, right? Then he spent Tenhag's first season, so 22-23 season. He was on loan with Preston North End. He was only 20 years old at the time, but he made so many appearances. I think he made like 42 appearances for them. He was very, very impressive for Preston. He was actually named Preston North End's Young Player of the Year that season as well. Last year, we sent him on loan to Granada because we felt like maybe he needed some more development. And he was only loaned there for half a year. We ended up ending the loan early in January and then loaning him back out to Benfica. And we added all those clauses in, the buyback clauses, the match clauses, the add-ons. There were some add-ons as well. So this is where it starts to get interesting, right? So Benfica triggered the option to buy. We put in an option for them to buy. They triggered that in the summer. He signed a 5-year deal. We only got around 6 million euros, which is just over 5 million pounds for him. So a lot of people are not happy about that. We added, there's add-ons. I think it's like 3 million in add-ons, so potentially like 8 million. And then we also do have those clauses, right? So we've got the buyback for around 17 million. We've got the match clause, so we can match any offer that's lower than that buyback clause. But we also have a sell-on fee. So even if we decide, you know, we want this other left back, we don't think Alvaro is the guy, and somebody else comes in, one of the Madrid or something comes in and buys him for that 50 million release clause, we are going to get a percentage of that as well. So that's going to play into some of what's just going on. So Lionheart says preseason he was really impressive. Are we talking about Amas? Yeah, I think Amas started the preseason a little shaky, but I think as it progressed and as he just got more minutes, I think he did look better in preseason. Again, it's odd to me that he wasn't he's not been part of the matchday squad. Some people will tell you that he's just young. He was never really going to be in the plans. Like, it seems like Ten Hag kind of chooses one youngster and focuses on them for the season, but he is still very, very young. I think Amas, in my opinion, if there isn't a plan to bring Amas into the first team picture, I'm not saying start him, but I'm saying if he's not even going to be part of the traveling squad or a matchday squad, maybe do we think he's ready to go out on loan in like the Championship or like League One for the second half of this season? You guys let me know what you think. So what do Alvaro's numbers look like over the last years? And what I really want to look at is how they compare to the numbers of Luke Shaw, because that's really who he's going to be competing with. Because, you know, as soon as Shaw is fit, he's going back into that left back spot. So let me bring up some numbers here once my computer stops doing an absolute madness. All right. These are from FBref. You guys know how much I like FBref. So these are the basic stats. If you go to FBref and scroll down, they'll give you a lot more detailed stats. But these are some of the basic ones. So I started off with Alvaro's like first big season, and this was his 22-23 season at Preston. So you could see I've got to compare to Luke Shaw's 2022-23 season, because that was a season Luke Shaw was fit for us a lot. But you'll notice, you can see, and this is why it always maybe it's just because I've got experience with like assessments as a therapist or whatever, but it's funny to me how often the stats and the eye test butt heads when really they should be working together, because the numbers can tell you a story. As you look at these numbers, they can kind of tell you a little bit of a story about how these players play. So if you notice, the big difference is down in these progressive carries versus the passes. So remember, Alvaro was only 20 years old at this time, wasn't playing a ton of passes, right? He was more about carrying the ball. If you look at his progressive carries, his take-ons, his touches in the attacking penalty, the progressive passes received, so where he's receiving the ball compared to Shaw's, it's like almost opposite, right? But Shaw is more passes. And a lot of this does have to do with system as well, but you can see the differences right there, right off the bat. And then if you go down to the bottom of these percentile ranks, you'll see that even though Alvaro was getting higher up the pitch and getting involved in carrying the ball, he was also putting in more tackles, more interceptions, and getting involved defensively. Now, Shaw was playing a little bit more blocks and winning a little bit more aerial duels, but Shaw's also a lot older as well. Danny says he needs the bulk up. Still young. He's not up to the physicality side quite yet. Definitely not ready for championship. They pushed him. And it could be. And that's why I'm asking your guys' questions. I know some of you watch a little bit more of the academy than I do. And sometimes I do, like Danny, like when it comes to South American youngsters, I rely on your expertise, my guy, because you probably watch a lot more of that, too. Then he says, passes completed now. I see why Erik ten Hag didn't use him. Yeah, the pass completion and passes attempted. So he wasn't playing a lot of passes, and this is where it can start to skew. So that his average, he's playing like 30 fewer passes than Shaw. So this is why I don't like when players haven't played a ton of matches trying to use the percentile ranks, because the percentile ranks and the stats will get skewed depending on, you can make, if you just play 5 passes and you complete them all, that's 100% completion, but you only played 5 passes. If you're playing like 50 passes and you completed like 40 of them, it's not going to be 100%, but you're playing more passes overall. So it's interesting. It definitely, but if you look, I think that Ten Hag didn't want his fullbacks maybe to carry the ball that high. I couldn't tell you, but some of these, and who knows, maybe some of these decisions were made before he arrived. But I don't have a problem with him going on loan. He obviously did very well, but we can see there's a little bit of a difference between the way he and Luke Shaw are either play or how they're used as well. Let's go down to the last year. Danny says, I bet that percentage grew at Benfica. So let's look at the percentages over the last year when he was on loan at Granada and he spent half the season at Benfica compared to Shaw's best season as well. Again, as Danny was saying, the passes attempted shot up by like 30, matching basically what Shaw was doing almost, the pass completion. So it's one of those things where maybe that as he's growing, as he's developing, and as he's being entrusted not only with that role and having more faith put in, but maybe as he's also developing an experience, getting more minutes under his belt, developing confidence. Maybe he's attempting to make more of those balls. I couldn't tell you. But you can see the defensive, the interceptions are roughly-ish the same-ish. But again, he not only maintained his ability to carry the ball, he improved. A lot of these numbers jumped up to the 90th percentile and above. So he's in the top 10% for carrying the ball, carrying it higher up the pitch, taking people on, getting high up in advanced positions to cause something to happen. His shot creating actions compared to Shaw's over the last. So again, this is Shaw's 2022-3 season because this was the last full season he played, and this is Alvaro's last season, so the last year. But his shot creating actions. So as he's growing, as he's developing, and as he's being entrusted and playing more, he's getting more confidence. He's trying to create more. He's trying to do more. Danny B says, this is another bad transfer decision from Erik ten Hag and Murtaugh, though. It could be, or could it be part of a master plan, again, maybe to go and let him do stuff, let him develop, see if it's worth bringing him back, and if we want to bring him back, we get him from super cheap. But we're basically letting someone else develop him, because it's hard to say that he would have been able to do this at United, that he would have been able to replicate. Still, I think it would have been great to have him as an option, but at the same time, long-term development would have been. This is always the hard part you get with players. Do you want to keep them just in case somebody gets injured, or is that going to hinder their development because they're not getting minutes? He got minutes at Preston. He had a whole year there. Very good. Familiar with the English game. It's a tougher league, as Danny was saying. Went to Girona, maybe want to play where there's a little bit more technicality involved. And they went to Benfica. We know that Benfica is a really good place for young players to go and develop. So would he have gotten all that experience had he stayed? Probably not. And it probably would have hindered him long term. So it could be a master stroke. Again, I'm not saying that that's what the case or not. I'm just saying that's an option. So, but I do agree that, a move like that and what we're seeing from him warrants a little bit more consideration. Dark Crow, been a long time, my friend. How are you? Good to see you. Lionheart says, perhaps the question should be, would he want to go back to United and play second fiddle to Shaw? And that's something we're going to chat about here in a second. And play, because if Shaw's fit, he plays every time. Yeah, that's what I said earlier, right? Particularly Benfica now. Yeah, and it's hard. Danny says, true, never developed properly under us, and the environment would have sucked. Yeah, I think, again, Granada's not United. Benfica's not United. Preston's not United. It wouldn't take long for people to turn on him at United. You've seen how quickly the media turned on Kobbie Mainoo after his first England game for England. They were already with the knives out. This is the kind of pressure that you don't get at any other club, any other place. Is these United players. They want to single out United players. You notice no one's talking about Virgil van Dijk getting sent off for the Netherlands, but the moment De Ligt gets hooked at halftime, even after there was one goal that the Netherlands conceded that was all Virgil van Dijk, not De Ligt. It's the knives are out for De Ligt because he's a United player. If he were still at Bayern, no one would say anything about it. Literally, it's the facts. So the question is, as we're discussing, as we're looking up some of these numbers, if Alvaro's numbers are good and the eye test checks out, right, why didn't we keep him? Danny B says Virgil Van Dijk. Yeah, it's I can be a bit of a savage sometimes, especially when it comes to Liverpool. I just don't care. But yeah, so why didn't we keep him if his numbers are doing well? Why did we roll the dice on the fitness of Shaw Malacia, which was kind of loaded dice against us? And especially when we made they were injured when we made the decision to let him go, right? And they were injured in January when we let Reguilon, and we brought back Alvaro and let him go to Benfica. Why did we do that last season instead of keeping hold of a promising young left back during this injury crisis? Did we think that Harry Amos was better? Someone was talking about earlier. Were we willing to take the short-term hit and the risk in favor of waiting for Amos to develop? Maybe somebody looked at Amos and thought his ceiling was going to be higher. I don't know. Was it a financial decision made from underneath the shadow of PSR? We know that PSR has hit us a lot recently. We're struggling. We sell a lot of academy players. In the last year, we've sold a lot. Camboala, Elanga, Henderson, Greenwood. That was some different circumstances, but this one, another one, Alvaro, Zidane Iqbal, Ted and Mengi, all these guys have been sold because they represent pure profit. And if you remember, we've added so many sell-on clauses to these players that, yes, we've sold a couple of them for pennies, for peanuts, but we'll make more if they develop. And some of these players we do have buyback clauses on as well. Darko says, we have to accept we're an attractive club to the press. Nothing new or special. It is what it is. Danny says, I agree. PSR was the main reason. It could have been. I'm trying to throw out all the things that I can think of that maybe had something to do with this. I think that with Ten Hag too, I think that he is a guy who does look at youth. I think obviously he learned the value of that at Ajax, but I don't think he is just going to promote and keep all the youth. He's going to have a high standard for the youth that he thinks are going to make it, the youth that I think are going to work in his system, and the youth that he thinks are ready to play. And I don't think, and if that means some people are going to be let go, it is what it is. But that's not a Ten Hag thing either. We've done this for years. Remember, we've been speaking a lot about Angel Gomez this season. It was a similar situation with Angel Gomez. He wanted to play. Mourinho didn't think he was ready, so he left. We have done this sometimes. Not everyone that comes through the academy is going to be ready. And maybe sometimes going off and spending a year or two someplace else is probably better for them development-wise. We could get Angel Gomez for free or for cheap this year if we wanted to, and it could be a return made in the stars. Who knows? So why did we let go of Alvaro? So in an interview with The Athletic last winter, Alvaro revealed that he was basically told he wasn't in Ten Hag's plans. He says, what message did United give me? That I should go out on loan, that Ten Hag didn't count on me, that I should continue to gain experience, rhythm, and we'll see what happens in the future. So again, this was last winter. This isn't recently. This was last year when he was going between Granada and Benfica. At the time, it sounds like the door was still open for a future at United and that Alvaro was keen to come back and prove himself. Because at that time, he said, my main objective is to return to United and make a place for myself there. So at that time, again, that was last December. That wasn't like this year. So this was before his move to Benfica was made permanent. So if the move was made permanent, I think maybe his opinion and maybe some of his statements would be different now than it was then. I'm saying the door's never closed unless you close it. So we'll see what happens there. So United's statement, though, when we sold him, so when we made that move permanent, United came out with a statement. This maybe this is me reading a little too much. I don't know. You guys let me know, but we'll see what this says. So at the time, it says everyone at United would like to wish Alvaro all the best of luck in the future, and we'll be keeping an eye on his progress. So obviously, we've made good on that by sending scouts, and we've been monitoring his progress since his exit. So we've made good on that. So we can't ignore the fact that we are still watching him. So there's still interest there. There's still something there on our end, at least. We wouldn't be doing that, I don't think, maybe if there was zero indication from the player or his camp that, he's still keen to return someday. There's nothing wrong with being sent out on loan if you're not quite ready. David Beckham was sent out on loan when he was a youngster. We send a lot of people on loan. It's part of the process. Lingard was on loan for a while. Harry Kane, before he was at Spurs, went on loan at Leicester for a while. It's part of football. It is what it is. So hopefully it's not a situation where the bridge is burned. We do have that buyback clause. The player does need to agree to that, though, if the move comes back. So door's not closed quite yet. So the question now is, does a return make sense? Does Alvaro coming back to United, does that help us? Does it make sense? Is it best for him? Does it help us? Does it move the needle? He's doing very, very well at Benfica. It's always funny to me, though, so many fans will not rate the Portuguese league until a situation like this comes up where we want a player in the Portuguese league, and all of a sudden the Portuguese league is great, right? It's same with the Dutch league. A lot of people will watch a player in the Dutch league, and all of a sudden the Dutch league is totally fine. But up until that, it's like, why is Ten Hag buying Dutch players? That's a conversation for another day, though. So far this season, Alvaro has already matched the 5 starts that he had for Benfica last season. Remember, he was only there for half season last year, but he's already got the same number of starts, and that's just in the league. He's showing progression, he's showing growth, but it's also an indication of Benfica's growing faith in him. They brought him in young, they're developing him, now they're backing him. He's also played back-to-back full 90s in the Champions League this season as well, including a 4-0 victory over Atletico Madrid. So he's getting Champions League experience, and he's being trusted with full matches against pretty big opposition. It's not an easy task to throw a young 20-some-odd-year-old player with barely a whole lot of first-team experience at this level under his belt in a Champions League match against Atletico Madrid. And that was just the other week. But again, the question is he what United need? Does he improve us in that left back position? Now, you can say he does because Shaw and Malacia are just not there. It's hard to not improve on people who aren't there. Is he better? Would he be better than Dalot in that position? You guys let me know your thoughts. Recency bias would say yes, right? He does. But again, would a 21-year-old with only a few years of experience move the needle for us, or could we do better? We probably could do better, right? But then it becomes about cost. Now, I know I've said many times, as fans, we care to a certain extent about cost. Where I get into cost is when I know that with good scouting, you can get several players for the price of one class player, one big name. Where I know that if you overspend on one player, that means we can't spend as much on other areas to strengthen. That's where my interest in cost comes in. So for 17 million, could you get someone who's better? For a little bit more, maybe say like 25 million, could you get someone who's maybe a little better, who is guaranteed first team ready? You guys let me know. I did my video a while back on left backs. Some of them might be a lot more expensive than Alvaro. In that case, it does become about cost. With left back being a priority, I want someone who's first team ready and improves the squad. Is Alvaro Fernandez that guy? If not, would you wait a year as a United fan? Would you wait till the end of this season? Or do you think that's something we need to address in January? If he does well in a year and he's proving, we could swoop in and again, bring him back for peanuts. Obviously, it's going to be more. Danny says Kirkes maybe, but is he as good? Yeah, I haven't watched a ton of Bournemouth, and so I can't give a definitive answer on Kirkes. I know he's a big deal. I know he looked. I'd watched him. I think I've seen more of him at the Euros than I have at Bournemouth, and that's just because I've only got so much time in my day. I can't watch every match. So obviously, I'll watch Bournemouth when they're playing us, and we'll see how he does against whoever we have on the wing. But a lot of people talking about Kirkes. So reportedly, he was a name on our list being discussed earlier this season. Danny says maybe Davis. We're going to have to spend 50 for a first-team left. Oh, yeah, I've spoken about Leif Davis a lot. He lit it up in the championship last year, had tons and tons and tons of assists. I like him. When I see him this year, he's getting in good advanced positions. He's getting involved higher up the pitch. I'd like to see him kind of create a little bit more. But I've seen him also start kind of invert a little bit and move into that final third in that the box a little bit more too. I really like Leif Davis. I think if Ipswich are at the risk of being relegated again, he was one I would definitely go pick up. I think he definitely is a good player. But again, as Danny's saying, left backs are not going to be cheap. Fullbacks are not going to be cheap. If we wanted someone who's going to definitely be a guaranteed kind of needle mover, we are going to have to spend close to like 40, 50 million. It could be a Jack Grealish situation with someone like Davis. Whether or not Ipswich goes down, it could have an impact on the price. Remember, there was that question of if Villa were going to get relegated a while back. They ended up not getting relegated, which is why Grealish was so expensive. Lionheart says we should be able to get Young on the cheap. You mean young player, or do you mean Ashley Young? Which one? Those are very, very different things. You got to let me know. Another question I have too is, so if we wait a year or before like 2026 or whatever, do you think Amos maybe? Do you guys think Amos has a higher ceiling? Do you think Amos would be ready by then? Amos is not that much younger than Kirkes, but obviously he's got next to no experience at this level. Would Amos be better? Ashley, I still don't know if you're who you mean. If are you laughing because I said Ashley, or do you mean Ashley? Because I don't know if I would take Ashley Young. That guy's a red card waiting to happen this season. Plus, he's like my age, so I don't know. I think Ashley Young is pretty much going to be on his way out. Then he says, yes, Lionhearts, maybe that's why Fernandez is best option along with Amos developing underneath him. And I think it's a possibility. That's a lot of pressure to put on two very young players, however. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying it's an issue of right or wrong. I'm saying that's a consideration that I tend to have. I think there's part of me that's always like, let's let him develop, whether it's a young manager, whether it's a young player but you always run the risk of someone else coming in, the player changing their mind. So it's like this flip of a coin, and if you move quickly to get something in or not. But that's when it becomes about having good recruitment, good scouts, good talent identification. If you trust your scouts, if you have good people in charge, then that shouldn't be as high of a risk as we've seen it in the last several years. But we don't. Hopefully, under this new ownership, we'll see some differences. I know a lot of people are raging at Ineos. They've been here a couple months. I don't know how upset you can get at Ineos about some of this stuff. They came in, inherited a dumpster fire, and they're just trying to figure out what part to start handling first and foremost. Danny B says could go get Hato or Inacio, could play left center back and cover left back too, but that's 40 million at least. Yeah, if you get Joel Hato, you're going to get, again, Tenhag is going to get stick for buying another, Dutch player. He didn't really play with him. He didn't need, they weren't together when Tenhag was at Ajax, but still, that's the stick everyone likes to beat Tenhag with. I like Joel Hato. I think he's very, very good, but we will see what happens with that one. There seem to be more questions than answers, though, as always when it comes to this. So get your guys' thoughts in on the chat. Yes or no. Why don't we? I haven't done one of these in a while. Let me do a. Oops, I don't even know how to do that anymore. Let's start a poll. Would you take Alvaro back at United for 17 mil? I'll just go ahead and throw that in there and see what you guys have to say. Lionheart says, I honestly think Amos is ready. I'm obviously basing that on the youth games, but he seems very comfortable. He looks very good. See, and this is the hard part where you get with young players too, is some of them get to a point where they look way ahead of, like, Amos is young, but he's probably already looking miles ahead of the U23s, the U21s, all that. But they're still not maybe quite ready. And that's the point where I'm like, maybe we need to see how he does on loan. Perhaps a loan to like a lower German club or like a lower Dutch club, or even somewhere in like Belgium or something could be good. But there's always a risk. There's never a sure thing in football, whether it's signing a new player, appointing a new manager, or whatnot. But it's hard because those are also the decisions, the ones that are not sure things, because nothing's ever a sure thing. But those are the decisions that cost people jobs. And so that's where it becomes about having good recruitment, and things like that. And so what are you guys saying in the chat here? 2 votes. Yes, so far. Everybody wants him back so far. So seems like everybody's kind of in the camp of bringing him back. If I had to compare him to who we have at left back, do I think that I would play him over Dalot? Probably not, personally, just because of Dalot's experience, and we know that Dalot is good. Yes, he's been struggling, but we can't take a few games of struggling as that's Dalot's whole career, because we know that that's not how Dalot plays. Would I take if we didn't have him as Rari and Dalot was our only right back option, and the question was, do we stick with Shaw and Malacia or go with Alvaro? I would definitely go with Alvaro because I can't rely on Shaw and Malacia. But again, this is a situation that we have at United. Lionheart says physically he might need to bulk up, as Danny pointed out. 3 protein bars a day should do it. Yeah, and it's, again, this is why, like, academy football, why I went into like talent identification and scouting stuff with the PFSA a couple of years ago, because one big consideration, especially with young players who are at that Kobe Manu age, who are at that Harry Amos age, is their bodies are gonna change, and the way you play, the way you move, all that, the physicality is going to change alongside that. You guys remember? You guys ever watched the first Captain America movie when he goes from being small to being big, and he's chasing that one guy out of the lab, and he's like not quite used to his body yet, and he's like falling through windows and stuff. That's kind of what you're going to get sometimes with young players when they go through growth spurts, when they hit the gym. All of a sudden, there's going to be a little bit of a breaking in period sometimes with the way that their body is going to change. And so there has to be a level of patience in there, not only with the player to adjust, but also patience to see how they adjust. But yes, physically, I don't mind my fullbacks being small. Typically, fullbacks tend to be a little bit smaller. Dan James, I thought could have been a good fullback, but like Raphael's a small guy. I'm not going to go through every fullback in football, but most of them tend to be on the smaller side. So I don't mind it, but I do think that as he grows, because again, if you think back to what each of us looked like maybe when we were 16, 17, I mean, probably I got a growth spurt when I was like 14, 15. I'm like 6'1" now. I used to be like 5'9" when I was a freshman in high school, so I had a bit of a growth spurt then. Seems like most people want shout. Lionheart says, that's a great shout. Cap would be the perfect left back. Danny says, 100% Lionheart's. Definitely keep him around and play U18s and 21s. I think Kokonki will break through if we get injuries at the back. I'm going to have to go watch a little bit of this Godwill Kokonki guy. I did see a little bit of a thumbnail from Howson earlier about it. I know Howson's a little bit more involved and knowledgeable when it comes to the academy. Obviously, it's easier when you live there. But he's got guys that come on his channel that talk strictly about the academy. And I know Howson's, I wouldn't call him like a top red, but it's in it, he's a United fan. It's in his family. It's in his blood. He's involved and interested in a lot of aspects of the club. I'm hoping that when I'm over there in January to get to an academy match when they play Villa at Lee Sports Village. So I'm hopefully get a closer view of some of those young players. Yeah, Danny says this Kokonki guy is only 16, big unit. Yeah, he's massive, like you said, 6'2" or something. So he's bigger than I am for a 16-year-old. So that's a humbling comparison. So, but that's my breakdown a little bit of our situation with Alvaro. Like I said, a lot of talk been going around this week. And obviously we have a left back situation that we've got to figure out. I do think it's going to be a priority going into the summer. If we go another transfer window, if we still have the same injury crisis into January and we don't address it in January, then serious questions need to be answered at the highest level at this club. Because you can't just not address things and expect results. It's just that's not realistic. It's not fair. We can blame Tenhag for letting go of this player and that player. But again, Tenhag's not a doctor. If the doctors tell him that Shaw and Malacia will be fit, nothing we can do about it. And so again, and Tenhag is not the one who's making a lot of those big decisions. So we'll see what happens. It's easy to look back on it now, considering where we are, and say this person, that person, they're at fault, pointing fingers. We shouldn't. It's hindsight's 2020, as we know. But the question now is not looking so much as what has happened, but looking forward. We do have a buyback option. We are watching him, and he is doing well. So Alvaro could represent a very shrewd masterstroke piece of business if he continues to progress at Benfica. I probably would, if I had to choose right now, I'd probably say just go for it. Lock that deal in now. Let him see out the rest of the season at Benfica, but let's lock him in and let him bring him back. Lionheart says, Godwill is built like a shit brick house. You mean a brick shit house? Future looks good. It's the now it's wearing. Yeah. And that's the thing too. And this is kind of like, you have to, like the rage I had with Ten Hag against Porto, when he literally said we took off Rashford at halftime because we want to keep him fit for the Villa game. Like, focus on the now. Like, let's get through this Porto match before we worry about the Villa match. Let's try to handle what we need right now. We really should have handled the left back in the summer, what we did. And let's try to handle that now before we start planning too high for the future. We can't only just buy youngsters and spend the next 5 years developing them. We're not. And I'm going to sound like the old adage, like you won't win anything with kids, but you do need a balance. The class of 92 had a team of experienced players with them. Guys like Cantona, guys like Irwin, guys like those experienced players. We need that as well. And so let's see. You guys want Alvaro to come back. I want Alvaro to come back. Buyback clause is good until 2026. So we've got time. The question, like you guys were saying, like Reinhardt's saying, like, is the need right now, does that outweigh some of the costs? So we'll see. Get your thoughts in the comments. If you weren't able to catch the live, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you everybody who got involved in the all-time 11 show on the weekend. That was a fun show. It was a long one, but it was fun. So go back and watch that one if you haven't got a chance to do that. Danny says, I think Jay Gomez in to replace Cass and Erickson. You mean Angel Gomez? Is that who you're talking about? Let me know if that's who you mean. Oh, you mean João Gomez? Yeah, I know you're a big João Gomez guy. Yeah, Wolves are not doing great right now either. I was telling Dylan the other day, sometimes I focus a lot on the teams that could be struggling and whether or not we can swoop for some players if they are getting relegated. So where are Wolves in the table? Let me look. This is professional. All right. Yeah, Wolves are bottom. Yikes. Yeah, time to go on a raid for Wolves. Danny says, get both Sean along with Nippon and Summer. We should be locking Nippon now and just letting him stay back. Like, this is what I don't get. We don't do these kind of deals where we can get the deal done now and basically just loan them back to these guys. Like, Liverpool just did that with Marmardashvili. I know Chelsea did that with Pulisic. You can do those kind of deals. City had done that with what's his face, Echeverry, is that how you say his name? We can do those kind of things. I just don't understand why we don't. Like, if it's a player that you like and a player that you want, get him. If you don't think he's going to feature now, it's fine. Loan him back to his club that he's where you're getting him from, and just let him play and develop again. It's not hard to do, but we seem to make things harder than they need to be at United. So that's going to do it for me, you guys. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Lionhearts. Good to see Dark Crow back in the chat. Good to see Mustafa back, man. It's been a while. We'll come back ahead of the weekend. Obviously, it's Monday. If barring any major news, like I said, it's international break slow, and you guys know I don't like just rehashing stuff. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Be sure to come back for the week if any major news breaks. And obviously, we'll be doing our our Brentford match preview ahead of the weekend. But until then, thank you guys for stopping by. Enjoy your day. Go check out the all-time 11 video. It is a fun video. Good to get everybody involved. I had a blast doing it. I was very tired after making it. I will tell my introverted ass was exhausted after that, but it was fun. So take it easy, guys. I will talk to you on the next one. Later.